A big thank you to Jero for sponsoring today's video on Patreon. Ovika versus Maelstrom Wanderer. So let's see who can get out the commander fastest. We've got a mana crypt, but nothing else going on there really. But I suppose we have to keep the mana crypt. We are on the draw here, so that should help us. Unfortunately, our opponent has a Sol Ring to start things off, so probably fighting an uphill battle against the Maelstrom Wanderer. Shockingly, not playing anything on turn 2. I don't see what we're going to get with Mystical Tutor really. Countering the Maelstrom Wanderer doesn't really do anything for us, so we'll just get out a tap land here. And now seeing a Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can crack this turn, and that's obviously ramp for us. I was looking at getting down the Bident of Thassa here, but might as well go for playing and cracking the Wayfarer's Bauble. And then we'll hold up the Mystical Tutor again, just in case we want to go for something with that. And we see the first cascade of the game, Emoti, Celebrant of Bounty, and cascading into a Shadow Spear. It could have been worse, but yeah, trample on the Maelstrom Wanderer is not good. So I wonder if we should just go for a Vandal Blast at this point then. Let's go for the Volcanic Island, and we'll cast ourselves the Mystical Tutor. This is my first time playing the deck, so I'm hoping I did have the Vandal Blast in here, and yep, I did remember to put that in, so tutor out Vandal Blast. And then obviously we draw into that, so play out a dual land here, and it's 5 mana into overloading Vandal Blast. That knocks our opponent down by 2 mana of course, and it takes away the trample, which I'm happy to do against the Maelstrom Wanderer of course, because yeah, at the worst of times this thing is going to threaten commander damage, so getting rid of the trample is obviously going to help us on that front. Taking 3 damage to Emoti. Alright, so our opponent's holding up mana here. You don't tend to see counter magic in Maelstrom Wanderer unless it's some kind of modal counter spell that they can use as card draw as well. We'll draw it into another land, so let's drop the island. We'll go for our commander here. And we just need to hope that our opponent doesn't have any kind of removal for our commander. And Explosive Vegetation, so our opponent going to ramp even further. That is 4, 5, 6 and 7. So still needs a land in order to play the Maelstrom Wanderer next turn. Alright, we managed to have our commander stick in play for a turn cycle. So we draw into another island. It's Bident of Thassa here, I think. Bident of Thassa triggers the Ovika, of course. So we get 4 1/1 Hasty Goblins. And then we can draw at least 4 cards here. We hope that our opponent blocks with Emoti, but I wouldn't have thought so. They'll want to cast the Maelstrom Wanderer next turn, I imagine. So we hit, and Bident of Thassa is going to have us draw 5 cards here. The fact that we've got haste on these tokens makes all the difference in the world. Okay, there's an Izzet Signet. Could get down a 3 mana Junk Winder, but we can always do that next turn, I think. Maybe Distant Melody here, because I'm not really happy with the cards that we drew. So get down an island, and we'll play the Distant Melody. That does of course trigger our commander, so we get 4 more tokens, which means we have a total of 8 goblins, so we name Goblin with the Distant Melody. We're always going to draw at least 4 cards with Distant Melody, as long as our commander's in play. Alright, and now seeing Reconnaissance Mission, a Battle Hymn, Mystic Reflection, Brainstorm, the Massive Raid, and a Tezzeret as well. We'll just discard some lands to hand size here. Okay, making a game out of it. The Maelstrom Wanderer is able to be cast here. So it's 3 cascades thanks to Emoti. First one is the Progenitor Mimic. That's pretty rough when we've got an Ovika in play. They'll want to copy the Ovika. Progenitor Mimic is cast, so it cascades into Growth Spiral. And they do copy the Ovika, so anything that they cascade into now is going to trigger that. They get themselves a Guardian Project, which does not trigger on tokens, thankfully. And after that, cascading into Nazahal, Primal Tide, so that cascades as well. Obviously Ovika doesn't trigger on creatures, thankfully, but does get into another big non-creature spell, Primeval Bounty. So a lot of goblins coming down here. The Primeval Bounty triggers Cascade as well, and I think that is a Sensei's Divining Top they're going into, so Ovika makes another Phyrexian Goblin. Guardian Project triggered by both the Nezahal and the Maelstrom Wanderer, so our opponent goes up to 5 cards in hand, and then spinning the Sensei's Divining Top. So I'm glad we're not seeing Trample from the Shadow Spear at this point. Our opponent going to hold back some blockers apparently and just hit with the big creatures. So we stand to take 24 here as I work it out. That's 14, 20, yeah, and 24. I'm going to take the damage here because I want to get a win with Massive Raid. Or I think we need to get a win with Massive Raid, I should say. And this is our means of doing it, I think. So we plummet down to 11, including 7 points of commander. And they can probably go wide on us next turn. Managed to dodge the Mana Crypt as well. Okay, there's a Machine God's Effigy. I don't think that really helps us. Could have it become a copy of this and then we could cascade into stuff. We're not going to be playing any big spells here though, so yeah, let's go for the Brainstorm first of all. And our opponent is going to draw a card. He's tapped out. We're looking to win this turn, so not too worried about drawing my opponent a bunch of cards. And that draws us into an Ashnod's Altar, which could come in handy. So we'll put back the Arcane Signet and the Reconnaissance Mission, I think. Yeah, can put that back. Get down Ancient Tomb, and then we can play ourselves the Ashnod's Altar, which obviously draws a card with Nezahal, makes us 3 Goblin tokens as well. And then for every 1 creature we lose to the Ashnod's Altar, we make 2 mana, so we lose 2 Goblins but get 4 back with Machine God's Effigy, so that's probably worth doing. Sacrifice 2 Goblins. I'm actually going to get down the Junk Winder here first, so that we can start putting things to sleep, just in case that's relevant. Then play the Machine God's Effigy. So then Junk Winder going to tap down the Nezahal, because we got 4 tokens into play here thanks to playing the Effigy. Tap down all 3 of the legendary creatures as well. Oh, and of course forgot about the wards, so we'll just let that fizzle. And we might as well just copy the Emoti at this point. Don't think we're going to be casting any big enough spells to make that relevant, but it's the most useful thing on the board, I think. Then we can let the floating mana go here, I think. I'm going to swing in and hit my opponent for 6 points of commander. That takes them down to 24. We draw 1 card with the Bident of Thassa, so I'll draw into the Reconnaissance Mission. And I think we go for Tezzeret the Seeker here. So I'll sacrifice a couple of Goblins in order to do it, because we'll get 5 back. Nezahal drawing a card again, up to 9 over there. Junk Winder going to tap down some of the Goblin tokens here, just in case we don't win this turn. And hopefully we'll be able to survive a swing back. I suppose what I could have done with Tezzeret is gone for Throne of the God Pharaoh, but we can also go for Skull Clamp here. Let's go for the Battle Hymn. That will make us some more tokens before it resolves, so we're going to have a lot of red mana here. This adds red for each creature we control. Junk Winder going to continue to tap things down for us. So that adds us 21 points of red mana. And we'll definitely go for a Skull Clamp here. So X is 1 on the Tezzeret. And like I said, could have swung in with everything and gone for Throne of the God Pharaoh, but I don't know how many creatures would have survived that, so Skull Clamp is safer here, I think. That is straight into place, so we'll get rid of some Goblins and start drawing some cards. And that draws us 2. We've got a Narset available to us and a third path. We've only got 1 blue mana available, unfortunately, so just have to keep going with this, I think. Oh, actually, I had enough exactly there, didn't I? Oh well, we'll draw into another red spell at some point, I hope. Yeah, I wasn't accounting for the fact that we would have got 3 more Goblins if we cast the Raid. Yeah, so we actually had the game there. Alright, a Swiftfoot Boots and an Obelisk of Erd will do. Now this is interesting. If we go for the Convoke here, does it mean that we don't get 6 Goblins? We'll test the theory. Okay, it's still triggering the Ovika. And we do get that Cascade as well, thanks to having the Machine God's Effigy Emoti in play. Keep Watch isn't going to draw us any cards because our creatures aren't attacking. Junk Winder just continuing to tap things down. We did get the 6 tokens from Obelisk of Erd. And obviously we're going to, yes, name Goblin there, so it's a +2/+2 buff on everything, which would be a non-bow with the Skull Clamp, but we've got a sack outlet in Ashnod's Altar for it. So now we've definitely got enough. Let's just go for the Massive Raid before I screw up again. So, like I said, does get us 3 more Goblins when we cast the Massive Raid. Massive Raid going to deal 28 to our opponent directly. Alright, and our opponent decides to scoop it there. Actually, turns out it's 31 creatures that we would have ended up with. Yeah, pretty damn good. Even with our opponent's copy of the Ovika, wasn't quite fast enough. I think the Vandal Blast really helped us there. We'll play one more. Ovika versus the very fast Yuriko here, but we do have a Mana Vault. Don't have any other lands though, unfortunately, and playing Mana Vault into Heraldic Banner doesn't really make sense. Could always try it and hope to get into a land. It could be a turn 2 Solemn into a Heraldic Banner, which will make 4 mana if we get another land so that we can untap the Mana Vault. Yeah, we'll try it, but it does entail us top decking into a land at some point, and we are on the play. So just get down a land into the Mana Vault here, and then we're going for the Solemn Simulacrum next turn. We'll need a third land after the Solemn Simulacrum in order to play the Heraldic Banner. Our opponent just drops an island and passes. And there is a Grim Monolith. I don't think particularly helps us either, so we'll go for Solemn. Solemn ramps us and obviously fixes our colours as well, so we've got the Izzet mana that we need. Still needing to get into that land though. At the end of the turn our opponent went for Stern Dismissal, which actually not against replaying the Solemn Simulacrum, but yeah, it does entail us actually needing to get into that land. Okay, and we get into a mountain. Mana Vault is going to ping us likely for the rest of the game. So we'll play ourselves the Heraldic Banner. Going to name red with Heraldic Banner, even though we could do with more blue mana. Obviously that gives us a buff on our goblins. Makes them all into 2/1s with haste. Now seeing a hard cast, Yuriko the Tiger's Shadow, surprisingly, so guessing they want the Solemn out of the way for that. Not seeing any unblockable creatures in play at the moment, so Yuriko not necessarily as scary as it could be. Although it might be that they've got a lot of bounce. We draw into an island off the top is really good. So let's just go for the Solemn Simulacrum here so that we've got a blocker. And worst case scenario, they blow that up and give us a card draw. Take some more blue mana. If we get into another land off the top next turn, okay, then we would have got down our Ovika, but apparently our opponent doesn't fancy his odds of getting through the Solemn. Up against Tovolar this time with more fast mana. This is 3 for 3 on decent hands. We'll keep it. We're on the draw as well, which I don't mind. So draw into a Mystical Tutor. I'm thinking we just get down a tap land here, but we'll hold up an Offer You Can't Refuse just in case. Not in too much of a rush to get down the Mana Crypt into the Throne of the God Pharaoh, because our opponent in those colours could have removal for artifacts quite easily. But if we see something like a Sylvan Library here, then we'll certainly counter it. Instead it is Kessig Naturalist, so we'll take advantage and get down the tap land here. A Brightstone Ritual for us. We saw a similar effect in the last game, so we know how potent that can be. Need to get into our commander first though. Only got 6 mana available to us next turn with the Rock in the Ancient Tombs, so still hoping for another land. Maybe it's worth Mystical Tutor into Fierce Guardianship after Ovika comes down. They might have some removal for Ovika, although it's not too likely on a big creature against a Gruul deck. Anyway, we'll pass the turn at that. Didn't cast a spell last turn, so that is flipped into Lord of Uvenwald. And then it is an Immerwolf, so non-human werewolves can't transform. So it doesn't matter what we do at this point, this thing is going to remain a werewolf. Probably best Mystical Tutoring for a board wipe, I would think, but does our opponent just scoop to that? That is something that we have to play around, unfortunately. Going to get hit for 4, and they'll make a red mana. So I'll just hold off on the Mystical Tutor into a Blasphemous Act here, because, like I said, I don't want to have my opponent scoop on us. We don't get into a land, we've got another turn to get into one, but that's not ideal, really. Yeah, we'll hold off on the Bribery as well. I think we're fine to get down the Throne of the God Pharaoh though. Need to have it in play for when all the goblins start swinging in and turning sideways. Tovolar entering the fray now, and taking 7 damage this time, adding a red mana again. And they do manage to draw some cards here. Like I said, I am kind of nerfing my plays here. I'm not meaning to patronise my opponent. It's just people scoop easily on Magic Online, so let our opponent have the cards and then we'll reality shift the Tovolar. So that is exile, put back into the command zone, and they get a manifest creature. So now we just want a land straight off the top, and that's exactly what we managed to get into. That's really good. So yeah, didn't go for the Fierce Guardianship at any point during all that, because I wasn't sure if we'd want a board wipe instead, but I don't think our opponent's going to have anything against a 6/6. Could have Beast Within or something like that, but we'll just play it out here and hope that we manage to do something into it next turn. Seeing another werewolf, or a wolf warrior, that is Silver Fur Partisan. And then still continuing to turn in sideways, they could have a burn spell that goes against the Ovika, making it more difficult for us to block. Okay, they went for Ancient Grudge, that's why I didn't want to play out the Mana Crypt before now. But too late, we've got the Ovika in play, so yeah, we might as well block something here because they don't have any more mana to burn stuff with. So we go down to 19, managed to get rid of one of their werewolves. And now then, do we want to Mystical Tutor and set something up here? We'd only have 4 mana left. Maybe just a Bribery is okay. Alright, so we get into an island, which I'm not against. Obviously wouldn't have drawn into a land if we'd gone Mystical Tutor there. So play ourselves a Bribery against our opponent. Not sure how many relevant creatures we're going to have to dig out of our opponent's deck, but we'll soon find out. And as I always point out with Bribery, you get to look at your opponent's list at least. So there we are. You can pause the video and have a look at the list if you want to. I'm just looking for the creature with the biggest CMC here, I think. Averbrook Caretaker is an interesting one. Yeah, I think that will do here. And then we're holding up an Offer You Can't Refuse and Mystical Tutor again. I think I'll go for the Mystical Tutor during our opponent's next turn. So we'll put a couple of plus counters on our commander thanks to the Caretaker. And yeah, that's enough to have our opponent scoop. In all fairness, in a more casual werewolf deck and in Gruul colours, they're not going to do a whole lot about what will soon be an 8-8 with Ward 3 and pay 3 life. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to get past that at the best of times for them. Hopefully you're all enjoying All Is One, and this Ovika list is in the description if you want to have a look at it yourself. Wasn't on my radar at first, but I started looking at the All Is One commanders and saw this one again and decided to give Is It a whirl, not something that I often venture into on the channel. Anyway, like I said, hope you all enjoyed it. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.